In every video I do when I'm analyzing a missing child or a crime or even a hoax like Bob Lazar with the UFOs or Bob Gimlin with Bigfoot, there is a money shot. That's what I call it, the money shot. The part of the story that, if it's made up, sells the rest of the story. So in the case of a UFO story, the money shot is seeing the UFO. If that part of the story does not ring true, then we really need to dig into every single word the person says. In the case of a missing child, the money shot is the day or the time period where the kid went missing. If that part has signs of deception or scripting or doesn't ring true, then we need to be extra skeptical when we look at everything else they say. So the money shot of this story is the day, the time period William was allegedly abducted. My biggest geographic regions for subscribers are USA, UK, and Australia. And for the USA, we're covering Summer Wells. For the UK, we're covering Madeleine McCann. And for my Australian subscribers, one of the largest requests I've seen is for me to cover William Tyrrell. So let's see if we can figure out what happened to William. I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze an interview of William's parents from 2015. William went missing almost a decade ago, back in 2014. And just like all my other cases, we're going to listen to what the parents say and come to our conclusions from there. Let's listen.
1 year ago, a little boy vanished while he was playing in his grandmother's backyard. One moment, William Tyrrell, dressed in his favourite Spider-Man suit, was playing games with his mum and sister. The next, he was gone, as if he'd disappeared into thin air. Initial panic by his family slowly turned into the darkest of despair, and a whole year later, they are simply heartbroken. Who would take their vivacious, funny, innocent 3-year-old boy? It's a question that torments one of Australia's toughest and most experienced detectives, who's heading the task force into William's disappearance. And tonight, we have unprecedented access to that investigation. We also hear, for the first time, the full story from William's parents, who want us all to know about their boy and understand their agony, in the hope that someone may have the courage to reveal information that will bring William home.
This is important. When parents of missing children go on TV, we can expect them to try to accomplish certain things. So one is to raise awareness about the missing child. So I'd expect them to describe the kid, maybe offer a reward or offer a ransom. Second, I would expect them to, if they think that the child has been abducted, to speak directly to the kidnappers through the camera. For example, William's our little angel. Please, if you return William to us, we will not prosecute you. You can drop him off at a police station. We won't chase you. We just want our boy home. We'll forgive you. All right, so pleading to the kidnappers if you actually believe they are kidnapped. The third thing I expect parents of a missing child to do when they have the opportunity to be on TV is to cajole, bully, manipulate, do anything they can to make the police care more about finding their kid, but in particular, the general audience watching the show to care about their kid. And if you've seen my video, What Do Innocent Parents Look Like? You'll know, for example, the biological mother of Gannon Stouch, right? When she had the opportunity to be at a press conference that was being filmed and televised, she used it to basically manipulate and cry and try to get the audience to care about her little boy by describing him as a baby. And she also took the opportunity to bully the police, right? To say, she pointed out one detective and she said, "You told me you'd find my son. You told me 9 times out of 10 you find them, so go find my son." That is how innocent parents act, right? So I expect them to, they don't necessarily have to be crying or shouting or doing any of that. but I expect them to at least do those 3 things. And if they don't do those 3 things, it's odd to me. Doesn't mean they're guilty, but we will note it, right? So I expect them to at least describe the kid, give pertinent details in case you see the kid. 2, talk to the kidnappers through the TV if they believe the kid was kidnapped or abducted, and even talk to the kid through the TV, right? William, we're looking for you. We love you. Hang tight. Mommy and daddy are looking for you. And then 3rd, to do anything they can to get the public to care. So that's what we're going into this expecting to see.
A little boy full of life.
Ready, set, yay!
3 years old, cheeky, adorable, and most of all, loved.
The other thing is, when I started my channel, I didn't want to do true crime. I started off looking at cheaters, video game cheaters, people who do steroids who are lying about it, right? We caught some of those. But I avoided true crime because this stuff is sad. And doing it, watching these videos day in, day out is hard. I'm not a true crime junkie by any means. But the way I pick my videos is I look at requests that I see in the comments. And I often get requests for missing girls. For example, this poll I did, so I collect requests and I put them on community polls on my community tab on YouTube, and I let my audience decide. So a poll I did a month ago was all just missing girls and women, right? Madeleine McCann, John Benet Ramsey, Summer Wells, Nicola Bulley. And then, another one I did 12 days ago, I put William on there and Ben Needham. And William lost the poll. So I shouldn't be doing a video about him. But it seems like every subscriber I had from Australia commented for me to look at this case. So I had hundreds of comments, hundreds of requests from my Australian subscribers who aren't even that big of a percent of my subscription base. Right? My biggest subscribers come from the US and the UK, and Australia is a distant third. But they made so many requests that I decided to put this case into my members section. So if you are a member of the channel, thank you for being a member. If you want to support the channel, please do consider becoming a member. In the members area, I post videos I'm planning to analyze or I'm considering analyzing just to see what the members think about it. Since the members typically watch all my videos, have binged all my videos, and catch stuff that even I miss because they know all the skills and they've practiced, they've watched my videos multiple times. So I put this video that we're watching now into the members section, and it got a ton of comments from my members, and lots of them noticed lots of red flags in this video. In fact, I saw so many red flags in the comments in my member section that I said, okay, I'm going to record this even though William lost the poll. Because there was such a big demand from my Australian audience, I hadn't done any specific video for them. And because my audience, my members found so many red flags. So that's why we're doing this right now. So hopefully my Australian audience shares this video and watches it so that YouTube doesn't punish us for doing something off script. As you know, whenever I do a video that isn't a home run, YouTube tends to throttle my channel for a little while. But there were so many requests for this, and I had never looked at a missing little boy on the channel that I figured we might as well do it, even if it risks YouTube punishing us for it.
Wherever we went, eyes would just be drawn to him. He's just got the most amazing smile. And the smile would just light up his entire face, and it's just got this giggle that just follows it. It's just amazing. It was just everything for him was just absolute joy.
And this is William, and I hear him. I hear his voice
Without watching a video, I can hear him say things. But I see all this stuff and it tears me apart.
One thing I noticed in my members' comments is that the parents here, if you're listening on podcast mode, you don't see this, but the parents here are actually covering their faces. They're hiding their identities. And many of my members noticed this and thought it was bizarre. I also think it is bizarre. These are also his foster parents. So these are not his biological parents. As I said in the beginning of this video, one reason for parents to do an interview is to emotionally connect with the audience, to get the audience to care about their kid. And that means that they don't necessarily care if they come off looking good, like the biological mother of Gannon Stouch. Right? She came off looking like a bully, looking desperate, shouting. She actually came off looking very unlikable. But that is how parents of actual missing children act. They don't care if you like them or not. They just want you to care about their kid. If my kid was missing, I would not care less about hiding my identity. I would be on here describing my kid and asking for help. So the fact that they hide their identity, even if they've been advised to by their PR people or their lawyer or whatever their equivalent is of whoever's advising them to hide their identity, is a red flag. I would not expect the parent of a missing child to do anything that would minimize their ability to connect with the audience. You've gotten on TV, your kid's been missing for a year or a couple months at this point. You have a chance to be on the news to talk about your missing son. Do you really care about blurring out your face? So I do think it is a red flag. I do think it is bizarre. It's unexpected. Does it mean they're guilty? Of course not.
Where's Daddy?
William Tyrrell would have turned 4 by now. But his life is frozen in time. Because 12 months ago, this gorgeous little boy vanished while on a family holiday to Nana's house in the country.
William was stolen. He was abducted, he was kidnapped, he was stolen. Whatever word you want to use, somebody decided to take him.
Uh-oh. That's not good. If you've seen my McCann series, my Summer Wells series, my John Bonet series, or even just my DDX Hoaxers playlist, where I talk about hoaxers like Bob Lazar, who hoax about UFOs, or Bob Gimlin, who hoax about Bigfoot, there are 4 things that hoaxers all have in common from my observation. And the first thing is conclusiveness despite the evidence. So when a parent of a missing child says, my kid was 100% abducted by someone, a stranger took my kid, and there's no evidence of it, that is a red flag. So if we don't see some sort of ransom note or kidnapping letter or proof that someone was in their house, right? Like a broken window and muddy footprints on the floor of William's bedroom, they are being far too conclusive for the evidence that we have. Because from this article that you can scan through here, right? I try not to read too much into any cases before I analyze them as not to be biased. But there does not seem to be any evidence that William was kidnapped. He just vanished. So the fact that they're being conclusive is a red flag. And it does suggest that they might be pushing a narrative. The same way the McCanns from day one said, Madeline's been kidnapped. Someone took her without any evidence. So we're off to a very rocky start. We have them hiding their faces, which defeats half the purpose of appearing on TV. Now I'm wondering if they're only appearing on TV to push their narrative that William was kidnapped, to point the eyes off of them, similar to the McCanns. In my opinion, I believe the McCanns accidentally killed their daughter. They covered it up to preserve their livelihood, to make sure that the twins stay with them, to make sure they didn't go to jail. And I often get questions, well, why do the McCanns do so much press? If they're guilty, why would they go on the news all the time? And my response to that is they're petrified of losing control of the narrative. They have to push their cover-up story. They need you to believe Madeleine was kidnapped, because as soon as you stop believing that, all the fingers are going to point right back at them, because the obvious suspect in any missing child case is the parents. Occam's razor tells us if a kid goes missing from the house, the parents probably did it. William was 3 years old. How many other people does he know in his life? He knows his parents. That's about the only adults a 3-year-old knows. So does the fact that they're saying conclusively that William was kidnapped mean that this is a cover-up, that they concocted a story and they're trying to push a narrative because they actually know what happened? No, not necessarily. However, if you remember my video, what do innocent parents look like? The innocent parents left every option available, right? So an innocent person who doesn't actually know what happened, I would expect them to say, William might have been kidnapped, and if he was, kidnappers, please return him. He might have wandered off. He loved playing with our family dog, and the dog would run down to the river, and maybe he followed the dog down the river, so we have to check there. And we have to check in the attic because he loved playing hide and seek. Also, we have this weird neighbor, and we have to look there. So every option is open. Abduction, kidnapping is of course on the list, but it is not the only option. I hope that makes sense. When a parent says that's the only option, it's a red flag.
The offender was in that area. This is a head start we've got with an investigation that you don't get with a lot of investigations.
Detective Inspector Gary Jubilee heads Task Force Roseanne, the team of detectives searching for William Tyrrell.
Locking down the detail is the key.
We have unprecedented access to their investigation, inside their command centre and inside the mind of a 20-year homicide veteran.
Every day I wake up, I think this is going to be the day.
1 second. So these are the detectives looking for William. And we just saw a shot of their cork board that they have here, right? Their little note board.
Their command centre and inside.
And on the note board, we have them saying William Tyrrell, born 26 June 2011, abducted 12 September 2014. That's not good. We better see some proof of an abduction here, some evidence. Otherwise, this is looking a lot like the McCanns, too much like the McCanns, where everyone wants to believe the abduction story so as not to appear like a bad guy accusing parents of accidentally killing their kid and covering it up. Me personally, I don't mind looking like the bad guy. I've been called every name in the book. All I care about when I make these videos is teaching you how to spot liars. And if I think the parents are lying, I call it as I see it. In a missing child case, there's only one victim, and that's the missing kid. In this case, the only victim in my mind is William Tyrrell. And if the parents are actually innocent, and I'm saying they sound deceptive and they sound like they're lying, then they should have been more candid in their interviews. They should have shown their faces. They should have spoken like parents of actual missing children. So when I say I think someone's lying, I don't say it lightly. I say it because I've actually listened to what they say, what they've said, and they sound like a liar. I don't like that these Australian police have the word abducted on their little corkboard as if that is in evidence. So I've not watched this interview. The only people who have watched it, whose comments I read, are members in the members section. And from what I've seen, no member has commented anything about there being evidence of a kidnapping.
Inside the mind of a 20-year homicide veteran.
Every day I wake up, I think this is going to be the day. Whenever the phone rings, I'm thinking this might be the breakthrough that we're looking for. So always got.
William's parents also wake every day desperately hoping for that breakthrough. They walk the same beach where William loved playing and longed to be hand in hand with their boy.
The other strange thing here is the only way I know these are foster parents is because my Australian subscribers have told me in the comments of the members section that these are foster parents. The fact that the documentary has not told us these are foster parents, I don't like that. I don't like when information is withheld deliberately. It's patronizing. And we saw the same thing with Nicola Bulley, where the police and the media patronized the general public by hiding the information that she might have been taking meds or might have been an alcoholic or might have been depressed. If you really want to help find someone, you need to be candid. Honesty is always the best policy. And when information is withheld, it raises my suspicion. Why are you withholding that? Why are you patronizing me? But the other thing that happens when you withhold information is people start cooking up conspiracy theories. Personally, I think they withhold this information probably because the parents' lawyers asked them to withhold it because they knew that it might make the parents look more guilty if the audience knows that they're foster parents. So there's probably a perfectly reasonable explanation for withholding it, which is not an excuse to withhold it. Or in the Nicola Bulley case, they withheld all that information about Nicola Bulley, probably, as I theorized in a video I did about her. I've done 2 videos about Nicola Bulley, out of an abundance of sensitivity and wanting to virtue signal how sensitive they are. When in reality, all it did was make people wonder why was that being withheld and suspect the police of being involved, and actually erodes the trust with the police. So the fact that they haven't mentioned that these are foster parents yet, and we're already 3.5 minutes into the documentary, is not a good sign. And by not a good sign, I mean I'm not holding that against the parents. I just don't like that aspect of this documentary. It's not being totally candid. So now I have to take everything it says with a grain of salt.
But these toys are...
And one other thought about that is the parents are hiding their faces probably out of another form of disrespect for the audience, that, hey, this audience is too stupid to listen to what we say. They're going to hunt us in the street. These hooligans who are asking to help us might actually attack us. So we're seeing lots of contempt that this 60 Minutes has for their own audience. If you actually want the audience to help you, you should be candid.
Are all they have to hold on to.
One's a little Spider-Man toy that he always used to play with all the time.
Private family matters mean the family and we can't show their full identity. But this is the first time they've been able to tell their story freely, so people can understand their loss and know a lot more about their boy.
Happy birthday, William.
What are some of the other things that he has?
Probably the one that he always slept with most of the time.
The other interesting thing is this documentary is telling us this is the first time they've been able to tell their story freely. So their kid's been missing for a year. And the documentary is trying to paint this as, hey, they haven't been allowed to talk to the press. They haven't been allowed to ask for help for their son. I don't know all the laws in Australia, but in the US, there is no gag order that can prevent you from asking people to help you find your kid. There is no law that prevents you from saying on Facebook, my kid is missing, here's a photo, please help. Or asking for the local news to come to you and cover you. Once again, it seems like a little bit of manipulation from this documentary. Why have they not spoken for a year? If there is some sort of gag order that can be issued in Australia to the parents of missing children to get them not to talk about their missing child, please let me know in the comments. But I highly doubt it. If it doesn't exist, what that tells me is that they're probably more nervous about protecting their own skins than actually going out there and getting the public to try to help find their child. And that's also evidenced by them covering their faces.
When we always went to bed, he would always ask for it. And it was literally little Tara.
They're always funny things they get attached to, aren't they?
Yeah, and I just, yeah. he can't sleep without little Tara. So, yeah.
These are the things that were inseparable from him.
Yeah. So, I just need him to be sleeping with something that he loves, looking after him, because he doesn't.
I just need him. The mother is putting herself as the priority. I need him to sleep with something that he loves so I can feel better. That is not how the parents of missing children typically speak. Typically, they speak with a concern for the child. I hope he has something to sleep with. I hope he's sleeping comfortably even without little Tara. Not I want him to be found so I can feel better. I need him to have his toy so I can rest easy. It's the wrong priority. Now, does all this mean they're guilty? Of course not. These are a ton of red flags. They are talking about him in the present tense, which is good, right? So I'll give them kudos for that. It is another red flag when parents of a missing child talk about the kid in the past tense, like we've seen with Summer Wells. Doesn't always mean they're guilty, but it is a red flag that we note.
He doesn't have little Tara.
I can even see the way you're holding it now. This is the most tangible thing you have right now.
That's all we've got of him. We've got everything that he played with and he loved, but that's all we've got. We don't have a boy. We need him home.
Right after I just gave them credit for speaking about him in the present tense, she just spoke about him in the past tense, right? Everything that he loved. Even if he's missing, he still loves his Tara doll. Right? He still loves his Spider-Man toy. So the fact that she put love in past tense there might indicate that she knows he is dead. And it's leakage. She's speaking about him in the past tense because she knows he's dead. Is this always the case? Of course not, right? Everything I say is something I'm pointing out to you as I notice it myself. And if you followed my channel for a while, you know that I imagine these cases like poker chips. Each sign of deception I notice is another poker chip. And once I've stacked up enough chips, I'm comfortable going all in that I think they're being deceptive. And then it's a matter of figuring out what they're being deceptive about. Right? So just because someone's being deceptive doesn't mean that they bludgeoned their kid to death. It could be that they were being negligent. Their kid wandered off. And now they're worried, oh man, if people realize that I was being negligent and wasn't paying attention to my foster child, and my foster child died, I might be on the hook for manslaughter or for criminal negligence. Deception does not always mean that someone is covering up a crime or even negligence, right? It could be that they know who kidnapped William and they just don't want to release that information because they know that person could hurt them or that they made a deal. Not that that's what I think happened here. I'm still not sure what happened here. But it is clear that the parents are not doing everything they possibly can to find William. If they were doing everything they possibly could to find William, I would expect them to be doing interviews long before a year went by. I would expect them to be showing their faces. Why? In order to get the audience to care, in order to cry on camera, even if it's fake tears, even if it's crocodile tears, just to manipulate people to care more about their son.
There are legal complications in relation to the family, but does that have any bearing on William's disappearance at all?
No, it has absolutely no bearing. I know there's speculation on behalf of the public, but it has no bearing on the disappearance of William at all.
They don't know where William is. How can you say... This is frustrating with... We don't see this as much in the US. But some of these UK reporters, and now it looks like the Australians as well, really patronize their audience. So they just declare things without backing it up at all. We just got information that there might be legal trouble with the parents, and now this detective is telling us, ignore that, look away. Well, I don't want to look away. it's interesting with the Australian media as well, because one of the best McCann's documentaries we've seen was made by an Australian production company. And we did a 2 or 3 part series following that documentary, which is great. It was very well balanced. This one, not so much.
For the record, can you rule out that there is any family involvement in William's disappearance?
Yes, we've ruled that out.
How do you rule that out? We need to start seeing some evidence of what they're saying in this documentary. Otherwise, this is looking like a propaganda piece to me. In other words, it's looking like a virtue signal. They don't want to accuse the parents, so they're tiptoeing and walking around eggshells whenever they talk about these parents. They're allowing them to cover their faces. They're allowing them to dismiss any legal troubles they have. They're indulging them by not announcing that they are the foster parents and not William's actual biological parents. And now we're being told, without any evidence or any proof, that it's clear that they are not involved. Well, I'm not satisfied. Unless I hear it with my own ears and see with my own eyes, I'm not satisfied. Also, you shouldn't be either. If I ever say something on my channel without backing it up by showing you exactly what I'm reacting to, feel free to disregard me too.
The town of Kendall is half an hour from Port Macquarie on the New South Wales mid-north coast. It's a peaceful country town, popular with families and retirees. William's nana lived here on this big, tranquil bush block just on the edge of town. And having been there, this is a happy home, a big, safe backyard, and a very quiet, safe neighbourhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cul-de-sac.
No reason to think otherwise. No reason at all to think otherwise. The furthest thing from our mind.
So this actually sounds a lot like the McCanns. So if you've not seen my McCann series, I suggest watching that one. It is my longest ongoing series, one of my most popular series. And the lessons from that series apply to John Bonet, Summer Wells, and now William Tyrrell. The McCanns said almost the same thing word for word. A kidnapping was the furthest thing from our minds. But then when the kid goes missing, it had to be a kidnapping. Well, which is it? Is it totally unlikely and the furthest thing from your mind, or the most obvious thing that you can be conclusive about without any evidence? That sort of contradiction is indicative of a lie, of a narrative. They're saying it was the furthest thing from our mind because that makes them look good. Okay, we allowed him to go out and play. We're not negligent. We knew there were no kidnappers. And then conveniently, when the kid goes missing, it had to be a kidnapper. We're not at fault. A kidnapper took him. So no matter which way it cuts, they are never in the wrong. We let him run around by himself. It was totally unlikely of a kidnapper. As soon as he goes missing, it had to be a kidnapper. Totally self-serving explanations.
It was a last-minute decision to visit Nana's. Young William and his slightly older sister get a delightful surprise when their parents pick them up from daycare early for the 4-hour drive north from their Sydney home. The next morning is Friday, September 12th, 2014.
We wake up, we hear giggling and laughter and me telling everybody to be quiet and not wake up Nana because Nana was still asleep.
One sign of a scripted story or a made-up story is when someone speaks in present tense. So when someone tells you about something that happened, you can reliably expect them to speak in the past tense and tell you things in order as they occurred, like a parade passing in front of them. I woke up, I heard people in the kitchen, I went out to the kitchen, I smelled something good, I saw that they were cooking pancakes. Right, so they tell you, first I smelled something good, then I learned it was pancakes, right? They don't say, I smelled pancakes, right? Because at that point in time, they only smelled something good, and then they learned it was pancakes, and that's how they tell it, all past tense. When someone switches to present tense, It is a sign that they might be making up the story in the moment. So they're speaking in present tense because it's presently in their mind, in their short-term memory as they're making up the story. Or just that the story itself is fabricated. So it never actually happened. It's not in their memory. And they speak in present tense because it's a story. Now, if someone speaks in present tense, does that mean they are lying? Does it mean their story is fake? No. Sometimes people speak in present tense if they've been traumatized. Once they get to the traumatic event, they switch to present tense. But the switching back and forth between past and present is a much more reliable indicator of a made-up story. So let's listen again to what she says here. All right, she's describing, I assume, the day William went missing.
We wake up.
Second.
From their Sydney home. The next morning is Friday, September 12th, 2014.
We wake up. We hear.
We hear, present tense. And I couldn't quite tell because of the accent if she said we wake up or we woke up. Another thing we like to see when someone's telling a true story is they speak for themselves. So I woke up. I did this, I did that. I. I is one of the most frequent words we use. You use it all the time. So when someone doesn't use I, it's a red flag. For example, if she says, you wake up, you go to the kitchen, you see William sitting at the table. She's not saying I, she's saying you, right? Me, I didn't see William, I didn't wake up. It's hypothetical, you. Here she's saying we, right? We wake up. The question is, did she and her husband wake up at exactly the same moment? Because if not, why is she saying we? You might say we if you scripted a story. If you sat down ahead of time and said, hey, this is what our story is going to be. We're not going to talk about what happened to William. We're going to say we woke up at 8 a.m. We're going to be really exact about all this. We went to breakfast. We're going to say we heard William laughing and his sister just to prove that he was there. So that's how a scripted story works. We, because you're sitting down with someone coordinating the story. So let's listen again.
The next morning is Friday, September 12th, 2014.
We wake up. We hear giggling and laughter and me telling everybody to be quiet and not...
And me telling everyone to be quiet. It sounds like she's watching a movie. I see myself telling everyone to be quiet. I would expect someone who actually told everyone to be quiet to say, I told everyone to be quiet. I said, be quiet, guys.
Not wake up Nana because Nana was still asleep.
On that morning, William dresses in his favourite Spider-Man outfit.
In every video I do when I'm analyzing a missing child or a crime or even a hoax like Bob Lazar with the UFOs or Bob Gimlin with Bigfoot, there is a money shot. That's what I call it, the money shot. The part of the story that, if it's made up, sells the rest of the story. So in the case of a UFO story, the money shot is seeing the UFO. If that part of the story does not ring true, then we really need to dig into every single word the person says. In the case of a missing child, the money shot is the day or the time period where the kid went missing. If that part has signs of deception or scripting or doesn't ring true, then we need to be extra skeptical when we look at everything else they say. So the money shot of this story is the day, the time period William was allegedly abducted. And if that part does not ring true, then we need to be on high alert.
His businessman father briefly leaves the house to get better mobile phone reception and run a few jobs in town. William, his sister and mum go outside to play and explore in Nana's expansive backyard.
I thought I'd see if he wanted to climb some trees, so I was holding him up and saying, do you want to climb a tree? And he was like, no, Mummy, too high. And then we were playing, and I was playing Mummy Monsters, and so he's chasing me, and I'm doing the whole Ra thing, and, you know, I'm chasing him, and
I'm chasing him, he's chasing me. Notice she switches to present tense. So I'm going to play it again. Listen to the switching back and forth between past and present. And if you think this is a big leap, if you think, hey, Dee Dee, I speak in present tense all the time when I'm telling a story, really listen to yourself next time you tell a story and then comment how many times you switch to present tense. My guess is it's 0.
Jobs in town.
The other thing when we're listening back to this is to remember 99% of the time, if someone wants to trick you, they'll just omit information. So 99% of what someone tells you is, even if they're trying to deceive you or trick you, will be true. It's that 1% where they're either omitting information, where they're not giving you the full context, or they've scripted part of the story. That 1% of the story, the money shot, that they scripted to cover up what actually happened and to convince you that they had an alibi or that something else happened. That 1% is the part that we really need to pay attention to. The hard part is realizing which of their statements is that actual 1%. But a good clue to it is right here, where she's switching back and forth between past and present, and this is supposedly the time that William went missing. We need to really pay attention here.
William, his sister and mum go outside to play and explore in Nana's expansive backyard.
I thought I'd see if he wanted to climb some trees. So I was holding him up and saying, do you want to climb a tree? And he was like, no, Mummy, too high.
I thought I'd see, right? That's also not in past tense. All right, it's hypothetical. Or it's even just at some point she thought about seeing if he wanted to climb a tree. Like maybe when they were scripting the story, she thought, okay, here's what we'll say. I took him in the trees, I wanted to see if he would climb a tree. So she can reliably say, I thought I'd see if he'd want to climb a tree, because she invented that after he went missing when they were scripting the story. Am I saying that's necessarily what happened? No, I'm just putting it out there. A more reliable, better statement would have been, I took him out there, I held him up to a tree and asked if he wanted to climb the tree. And he said, no, Mummy, right? So everything's in past tense and declarative, not talking about hypotheticals and thoughts. If you thought something, doesn't mean you actually did it. The other odd thing here is they started their story waking up in the morning. So if let's say your dog went missing, okay? Let's say your dog went missing around noon or whatever time this is supposed to be when William went missing. And I said, what happened? What happened to your dog? Would you start your story the moment you opened your eyes and then tell me your entire day from there? Or would you say, I finished breakfast, I looked around, I called for Scruffy, Scruffy wasn't there, I ran outside, I haven't seen Scruffy since. I went up and down the street, right? You would start closer to the time period when your dog went missing, because everything else is not necessary. So why did they start the story when they woke up and made a point of telling us that they heard William and his sister giggling in the kitchen, and made a point of saying that Nana was sleeping? So there's no other witness. Nana was sleeping. We woke up. We heard William giggling in the kitchen. He was in the kitchen. If something did happen to William, I think it happened the night before, or it happened that morning. And that's why they felt the need to tell us he was at the breakfast table in the morning, giggling and having a great time. Which might explain why the dad had to jet off, had to drive out that morning right away. Right? Didn't they drive to grandma's for holiday? Why is the dad taking their SUV or van out to go do jobs? It's a Saturday. They live in Sydney, right? They drove 4 hours to get to grandma's house. He has a job at grandma's house. Be aware, I'm just workshopping my theory here. I just think it's odd they started their story the moment they woke up. They picked that time period. The interviewer didn't ask them, tell me what happened from the moment you woke up. They chose to talk about waking up and chose to talk about hearing William laughing in the morning. Why did they do that?
And then we were playing, and I was playing Mummy Monsters, and so he's chasing me, and I'm doing the whole rah thing, and, you know, I'm chasing him, and he's giggling his head off.
He's giggling his head off, right? Present tense again. There's also, if you're new to my channel, and I'm sure I'll get lots of new subscribers, hopefully my Australian audience shares this video. If this video gets, you know, like my typical videos, 40, 50,000 views, we will do a part 2. I'm happy to make an entire series. I think there's a lot to this case. I chose to do this case even though it lost the community poll. This video will be demonetized, I guarantee you. The Australians are very good about geo-blocking my videos and demonetizing them. So this one I'm purely doing because of the lessons it can teach, because it seems to line up with other videos about guilty parents of missing children. So it's valuable for my UK audience, my US audience, because of the parallels, but also because I would like more Australian subscribers. I want to get to 100,000. I want 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. I want to be big enough where I can actually invite people on and interview them and show you how to catch a liar face to face. So hopefully, if you are Australian, if you want me to do a part 2 about this video, please do share the video. Do watch it. Watch it all the way through. YouTube really cares about how long a video is watched, how many likes it has, how many comments it has, etc., etc. From what I've seen so far, there are a ton of red flags in this video.
That great photo of William in his Spider-Man suit that was taken on the deck.
Yes. It was really weird because he was doing...
Oh yeah, my other point there was, if I have new subscribers, lots of new subscribers, I'm just going to explain this. I know if you've been here for a while, I don't want to belabor the point too much. In statement analysis, we have the concept of leakage, which is where people use words that might tell you what's actually on their mind, right? The memory is a lot stronger than imagination. So for example, with the McCanns, they use nautical analogies, references, words very often whenever they talk about Madeline. So for example, they say, I was trying to keep my head above water. I was treading as hard as I could to stay afloat. Well, they say well a lot when they're talking about Madeline, are cold, dark, or deep. And leakage is the phenomenon where someone picks the words, because we pick the words we're going to use in milliseconds, and the words they pick reveal something that's in their memory. The words they pick reveal the truth. And some famous examples include, a case where the parents said they were drained, right? Their daughter was missing. The parents said they were drained. Actually, I'll show you that one right now. So the deception deck is my 52 favorite rules for spotting liars. Thank you to everyone who has pre-ordered the deck. They're going to be shipping next month. And each card has a rule on the front. So a word or phrase, a grammatical rule, a cue, or a concept relating to catching liars. And the one I've put on the example card is leakage. And I'll just read you that rule here. Leakage can unintentionally reveal the truth through the choice of words, as it's challenging to suppress real memories while telling falsehoods. If someone repeatedly uses an unusual phrase or word, it might be a clue worth investigating. And each card has the rule on the back, so you can use like a flashcard, memorize the rule so you can spot liars in real time, as well as a real-world example. And the example I put on the leakage card is this one. In 2020, after reporting her daughter missing, Malaya missing, Sahara Irvin described to the press feeling drained. Later, Malaya was found in a storm drain. The coincidence in Irvin's choice of the word drained and the discovery location of Malaya's body suggests the possibility of Irvin inadvertently leaking hidden information about her daughter's whereabouts during her interaction with the press, right? So the fact that the mother used the word drained may not have been a coincidence. It may have been an example of leakage, right? So where the truth leaked out inadvertently. And here we might have the first example of leakage from these parents. The mom just said William was laughing his head off.
Saying mummy monsters, and so he's chasing me and I'm doing the whole rah thing, and I'm chasing him and he's giggling his head off.
He's giggling his head off. I'm noting this. Let's say we hear them talking about his head later. Let's say we hear a bunch of references to head or brain or skull or hair. Please put it in the comments, especially if you're one of my Aussie followers, someone down under who's followed this case. Put in the comments any references they've made to his head. Because if they keep talking about his head inadvertently, it might be that they are picturing him with a broken skull or a collapsed head or something happening to his head. And leakage is one of those phenomena that you notice with accumulation, right? You have to have a lot of examples of it. And usually what happens is people recognize it in retrospect. So once a body's been found, like the Malaya example I gave you, then they go back and they notice the leakage. But William's not been found. So we need to look at leakage projecting, looking forward. I just heard her talking about William's giggling his head off. Could she be picturing him with an injured head, let's say a collapsed skull, and crying? So not giggling his head off, but crying his head off. Possibly, right? And yes, I do realize it's a reach because this is the first instance of it. But this is also one of the few phrases they've used, right? An unusual phrase. And by unusual, I mean there's 1,000 different expressions you can use to talk about someone giggling, right? He was laughing his pants off. He was, giggling like a maniac. He was laughing uncontrollably. She chose to use the words. In the few milliseconds she had to choose a phrase, giggling his head off. So that's why I'm pointing it out. Let's not read too much into it. But if you do have other references to head, cranium, hair, anything like that, I would love to see it.
That great photo of William in his Spider-Man suit that was taken on the deck.
Yes. It was really weird because he was doing rah, Daddy Tiger. And that photo I took was, he was actually looking up at me, and I've sort of crouched down in a really weird position and taken the photo. And it was mid-roar, which is why his mouth's wide open.
That was part of the game.
Yeah, that was the rah, Daddy Tiger thing, and that was a rah.
When was the last you saw him?
Playing around that patio area. Mum and I were sitting on 2 chairs, and then he jumped off.
This is a lesser known rule of statement analysis. It's one I don't bring up a lot because there are certain rules I don't like as much, that I don't find as reliable. But when someone talks about their position, right? So I was sitting there, or I was standing there, right? So basically they're talking about their physical position in a space. It can indicate that they were stressed at that moment. So I was sitting there with my mom. So it can indicate stress. Also, if someone says an object was sitting somewhere. So for example, Bob Lazar said, right, when I first saw the UFO, I saw it sitting there, a UFO. When someone uses an action verb like sitting or laying or standing about an inanimate object, it typically indicates that they placed that object into their story. In other words, it's made up. And that's also in the deception deck. So the fact that she talks about her mom and her sitting on the deck could indicate that they were stressed at this moment. Maybe something was going on with William, but she's leaving out that context. Or she's placing herself and her mom into a story that didn't actually happen.
And he was playing on the grass. And then what he did was he went just around to the right. I could still hear him. He was roaring. And then nothing.
And then nothing. Another way to spot a made-up... At this point, there's a ton of red flags here. I'm not going to give these parents any benefit of the doubt at this point, because there's too many red flags now. I've got a whole stack of poker chips that something probably happened to William the morning of or the night before. Probably happened to his head, and that's why the dad drove off in the morning to go hide the body. And that's from watching 9 minutes of an interview. So if you don't agree with me, believe me, I'll refine it as I go on. It will become a lot more clear. Just like with the McCanns. My first theory about them was really rough. Go watch the theory now 20 videos in and let me know if it's refined. So right now, I'm just going off of 9 minutes of a documentary. That's literally all I know about this case. One way to spot a made-up story is fabricated stories typically have very short endings. And we saw this in my Meghan Markle videos that I did, right? Where Meghan talked about a fire in Archie's bedroom. There's a lot of detail about leading up to her learning about the fire, to the fire being put out. But then once the fire was put out and she got to the house, fire was put out. On to the next thing. Well, no. In reality, if something actually happened, about a third of a story is what happened after the main event. So in this case, she just told us the money shot where William was allegedly kidnapped. Fabricated stories, scripted stories linger on the money shot, and they don't go much beyond that. If this were a true story, I would expect her to say, I stopped hearing him, I got up, I wonder what happened, I ran over there. But liars, they want to sell you on the money shot. That's the part they had to make up. They just script it. They have to say it perfectly. And once they've accomplished that, they've built their alibi, they've said their little story, they end it. They don't think about the next part. Like with Meghan Markle, well, did anything burn in the room? Did the fire department come? Did the police come? Did you have to write a report? Did Archie, was he traumatized by the fire that he saw? Did any of his favorite toys burn up? Did the blankie get singed? Did you have to go launder all his clothes to get the smoke out? Right? None of that. Whereas a real story, like I said, about a third of a real story is what happened after the money shot, after the climax. So she ended this story in 3 words, and then nothing. That's not indicative of a true story.
What was the very last you saw or heard of William?
That was it. So that's my last.
So it's even worse than I said. He asked her a follow-up question, giving her an opportunity to add even more information. And she says, that's it. In reality, in the real world, when something happens, there's a reaction. More happens. There's always more that happens. All the way leading up to sitting down to do this interview, stuff has happened. Right? Did you run around checking the yard? Did you see someone? Did you hear something? What did you run and grab your daughter because you thought there was a kidnapper in the area? If you actually thought there was a kidnapper in the area, why didn't you go run and grab your daughter?
My last sound memory of William is raw.
My last sound memory of William. That is an odd statement. It might even be more leakage, right? She has another memory of William, but he's not making any noise, right? It's a lifeless body. So the last sound she heard was him saying raw or maybe screaming in pain or screaming for his life, and she says rah, right? Remember, 99% of the time, if someone's trying to deceive you, they'll just do it by omission. They'll leave out context. When she says she heard him say rah, rah can be a lot of different noises. Rah can be ah, right? I don't want to blow out your eardrums, but rah can be a lot of different things. It can be pain. It can be screaming in fear. Let's say someone snapped at him. He was making too much noise. He was running around playing Spider-Man too much. He's not actually their biological kid. Someone whacks him on the head. And, they whacked him too hard. Collapsed skull. Now what do? Do we call an ambulance and try to explain ourselves? Or do we hide the body and hope no one ever actually figures out what happened and cook up a story about him being abducted? So her last sound memory is him making a rah noise. But what about her last visual memory? Right? She's the one who made that distinction between sound and vision. Maybe her last visual memory of him is loading him into the back of the car before the dad drove him away to go bury him.
And then it's nothing. And then it's just silence and he's just vanished.
Right? It's just silence, he's just vanished. Like I said, a fake story, very short ending. They've said what they want to say. They think they fooled you. They don't think about what happened next. If a kid goes missing, there's still sounds. Were the birds chirping? Was there a dog on the property barking? I would definitely listen out for that. Maybe the dog found him, or the dog spotted an intruder. What about the daughter, the sister? Was she shouting for him? Did grandma stand up and say something? But she didn't invent that part, in my opinion. In my opinion, this is all fabricated. She didn't invent that part of the story, so it doesn't occur to her to even say it. So the upshot for you, if you're watching this video, is if someone's telling you a story and the ending of the story, right, the part after the climax is extremely short, you're probably being lied to. And the way to figure it out is to ask detailed questions about what happened after and see if they need to cook up details, if they struggle to answer your questions. And if they do, then you can add another poker chip that they made up that story.
We've literally got a situation where a child has disappeared, and as if it was just plucked, or William was just plucked from the air.
All right, so once again, there is no evidence of an abduction. If there was evidence of an intruder, of a stranger on the property, that's where the police would have said it. If there was evidence that anyone was there besides the parents and the grandma, it wouldn't look like he was just plucked into thin air. There would be evidence of a stranger there. It would look like an abduction.
I couldn't see him.
So the fact that there's no evidence means this doesn't look like an abduction, probably because it's not an abduction. So to all of my Australian subscribers who recommended this video to me, great recommendation.
I couldn't hear him. It was the world, it's like the world just came to a screaming halt. There was no wind.
Screaming. The world came to a screaming halt. So we have him saying, rah, screaming. This might be more leakage. The world came to a screaming halt. But there's other ways to say it. That's my point. She picked this particular expression. Out of the hundreds of expressions she could have picked, she picked the one that had the word screaming in it. Something in her brain, when she talked about the moment William, the last time she saw William, something in her brain triggered her to think of the word screaming. And then when she talks about the last time she heard him, she's talking about him going rah, rah, rah. Kids do make funny noises and run around, but it could also be a euphemism for a scream. So any instance of them talking about his head or screaming or loud shouts or anything like that, I'd be interested. Please put them in the comments, because if we do a part 2, if this video gets to 50,000 views, we'll do a part 2 One of the things we'll look at is all the instances of leakage and see if it accumulates to something that can refine our theory about what happened to him.
There were no birds, there was no movement, there was nothing. And I'm looking at
Another sign of a made-up story is someone telling you the negative, so stuff that didn't happen. So her son goes missing. Is the first thing she did look around and do an accounting of all the birds in the area? Why would she do that? When someone's telling a true story, they tell you what happened. They give you affirmative information. When someone's making up a story, they give you stuff in the negative because they don't reveal anything that way.
looking out around this garden, I'm thinking, where are you? And I've just said,
I'm thinking, present tense. I'm thinking, where are you? Why not past tense? Why not I shouted, William, where are you? Why was she thinking to herself? If you're up, wondering what happened to your son, you're shouting, William, where are you? And Kate McCann made a similar mistake in her story. She said she realized Madeline was missing. She immediately concluded that Madeline had been abducted without any evidence, right? So the first sign of a hoax is conclusiveness in spite of the evidence. She immediately thought Madeline was kidnapped. What did she do? She said she ran all the way to the tapas bar and then shouted, Madeline's missing. So she didn't shout in the room, Madeline, help me. Where are you? She waited until she got all the way to the tapas bar, until she had an audience to start shouting. To me, that sounds like acting. It's either bad acting or bad scripting of a made-up story. And one way to spot made-up stories is also to look for loopholes like that, right? When people aren't acting the way they should in the circumstance. And even big multi-million-dollar Hollywood blockbuster movies with multiple scriptwriters, proof editors, professional people to make sure everything makes sense, those movies still have plot holes. That's how hard it is to come up with an airtight story. It's almost impossible. It's virtually impossible. So imagine two parents in the stress of a death, trying to orchestrate a cover-up, rushing, never having made up a story like this before. There's going to be a bunch of plot holes. And if you listen closely enough, you'll spot them. So here, for example, I was thinking, William, where are you? That's what I was thinking. If I even wandered to another aisle in a supermarket, my mom would be screaming for me. Dee Dee Jr., where are you? All right? She wouldn't be sitting there thinking to herself, I wonder where Dee Dee is. I hope he hasn't been abducted. So it's a plot hole.
I said, William, where are you? You need to talk to me. I can't see you. Where are you? And there was nothing.
And she's still thinking this or shouting? Let's see. Let's see if she corrected herself.
Screaming, there was...
And as if it was just plucked, or William was just plucked from the air.
I couldn't see him. I couldn't hear him. It was the world, it's like the world just came to a screaming halt. There was no wind, there were no birds, there was no movement, there was nothing. And I'm looking out around this garden, I'm thinking,
I'm looking out, it's a present tense, I'm looking out.
Where are you? And I've just said, William, where are you? You need to talk to me, I can't see you. Where are you? And there was nothing.
Right, I said, so soft tone. I said, William, where are you, William? Right, to her, this probably sounds like a good story, right? Okay, so my kid's missing. What do? I say, where are you? Because I don't know where he is. I need people to believe I don't know where he is. So I say, where are you? That's incorrect tone. She's using soft tone. If this actually happened, I would expect her to say, I screamed, William, where are you? I shouted, William, where are you? I yelled, William. But instead she uses the word said, in my opinion, because this never happened.
Detective Gary Jublin retraces William's last steps. So jump down here.
Yes, that's right.
After that,
After that, headed off around in this direction, around the corner of the house. The mother still heard, she heard him say roar, again in keeping with the game that he was playing at the time.
and that we think is around about here.
Yeah, this general area, because it was out of sight, and she heard it, and that was the last time she heard William.
Detective Jublin believes William wanders down the slope towards the tree.
The other thing is, in all my missing child cases where I believe that the parents are responsible for the kid either dying or going missing, and they're covering it up to protect themselves, and they're conclusive that the kid was abducted, I always say, right, just to illustrate that crazy things can happen, that a dingo could have dragged the kid off. Right, it's one of the memes on my channel in the live chat, right? Every time I do a new video, I premiere it live, and I am in the live chat with thousands of subscribers, right? Up to, I think, almost 2,000 on the last one. And one of the things we always say is when a parent is hoaxing and they say, you know, the kid had to have been abducted, had to have been kidnapped, that a dingo could have done it. Because crazy things can happen, right? A coyote can drag a kid off, a bear can drag a kid off in the Summer Wells case. And the fact that the parents don't ever consider that they're conclusive that a kidnapper took them is the red flag, right? They don't entertain other possibilities. And here we actually have a case in Australia. So the fact that the parents are conclusive that someone kidnapped William when any number of animals could have dragged him off, he could have wandered off, including a dingo, the one I love to use as an example of crazy things happening, is yet more of a red flag. Anything could have happened to him. So the fact that they're conclusive that he was kidnapped is the red flag in itself. It indicates that they are trying to push a story. In my opinion, it is a hoax. They want you to believe he was kidnapped by a stranger so that you do not suspect them. And their story sounds scripted. There's a ton of red flags. They're clearly not doing everything possible they can to find him. As I said, they're covering their faces. They waited a year to go to the media about this. All right, so we're coming up at over an hour here. Please do like, subscribe, share the video. Let's get this one to 50,000 views and we can make it a series. We're only 11 minutes into a 35-minute documentary. Also, please do consider becoming a channel member. In the next section, if we do a part 2, we will be looking at the catches that the members got in the member section. So things that they noticed that I might have missed out on. So I have not filmed part 2 yet. So if you become a member, you can also drop your catches on this thread here. So if you catch something that I think is particularly good or something I missed, you will be featured in the next video. So please do consider becoming a member. You can click in the pinned comment under this video. The second link is the link to become a member. Until next time, stay true. And one last thing, if you like this video, you'll love the video on your screen now, or you can click on the playlist on your screen now to watch my playlist of hoaxers. Until next time, stay true.